Hey everyone, so I hope whatever we have covered in what is deep learning part 1 is clear. Now let's look at the part 2. In part 2, we will cover the structure of neural networks, then we will see how to identify a node in a given network, and then we will see how to visualize or maybe represent a neural network using nested functions. Now let's see a very simple neural network structure. In this structure, we have the input layer, hidden layer, and an output layer. So if you think about this as the input layer, and the last layer we have the output layer, and then we have the output. So any number of layers in between the input and the output layer will be classified as the hidden layer. Currently we have only one hidden layer, but there could be multiple. So now let's understand what is happening here. So if we think this is the input X, we are passing this input to our next layer. In the next layer, one of the nodes would actually access that and use it and process it. After processing, it would pass it to the next layer. In the next layer again, the node would have some operations on the data and then pass it to the next layer, and eventually it would be coming out of the output layer. If we talk about this node, we can think about this as two different operations. One is the summation operation and one is the function. Similarly, other nodes as well. Now for simplicity, let's look at the right hand side. If we talk about the input layer, we are processing something and then passing it to the hidden layer. Then in the hidden layer, the nodes are processing the data again and then passing it to the output layer. And from the output layer, we eventually get our output, predicted output. Now, this is quite intuitive. But let's suppose there are multiple nodes here. Let's discuss how to identify a particular node. So if we talk about a particular node, how do we identify this particular node in a structure? That means, is there a symbol by which I can uniquely identify a particular node in a particular layer in a neural network? Now, let's look at this structure. In this structure, we have three hidden layers. And if we see the representation, this is layer 0, this is layer 1, this is layer 2, and similarly layer 3 and layer 4. So if we want to identify a node, that is this node. So this node can be identified by the layer. So it is in layer 2, and inside layer 2, this node is at the location 2. So you can uniquely identify this node as A2, 2. What does A signify? That we will look at separately. But if we think about, this 2 is for the layer and this 2 is for the location in the layer. Similarly, if suppose you want to identify some other node, and let's say this is the node. So this node can be identified very easily because it is in layer 3 and it is at position 3. So you can mark this particular node as A. This is at location 3 and in layer 3. This is very easy. Let's suppose we want to identify another node. So let's go to layer 1 and identify the middle node. Here, the location of the middle node is second and it is in layer 1. So it could be identified easily as A, the layer is 1 and the location in the layer is 2. Now, if we understand the previous part, let's look at how do we identify a node if a layer is given and the position is given. It's very easy, but let's find out. So this part, the first part, that is already clear. I hope you must have understood it. Now let's look at this question. If you have been given that the layer is 23, layer number is 23, that is fine. Now after that, if I say there are multiple nodes and this is node number 18, how will you uniquely identify this node? I'll wait for you. You can write your answers in the comment box. I hope it's very easy and you must have already written, but let's see. To identify this node, we can say A. Why are we using the notation A? That we will look at later. But for now, we can say A, the location is 18 and it is present in layer 23. I hope it's easy. Let's do one more. If suppose there are multiple nodes and this is at 28th position, how would you write it now? I'll wait for some time. I hope you must have written it by now, but let's see. It's very easy. We will denote it by A and the layer is 23 and the position in the layer is 28. Now let's look at a very simple neural network structure. Here we have layer 0, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3 and layer 4. Layer 0 is our input layer. So from here if we pass our input, that is the input to layer 1. Layer 1 would do some processing on this input and then give it to layer 2. Layer 2 will perform some processing on that input from layer 1 and then give it to layer 3 and so on. So let's think about this as a nested function. This we can say is actually x, which we are representing it here. So this is from layer 1, sorry, this is from layer 0. Now if we say this is x and layer 1's output will be after some processing. So we can actually say that this could be layer 1's output. So this is f1 x and this we have represented it here. You can see it. After that, layer 2 would perform some operation on this and the output we can actually think of it as function 2 and that would be this is the input to that layer which we have represented here. And if we think about it, this will eventually go on and in the end what we are getting out of this function f4 would be our y. And what we can think of this depth, this if we think about is our depth, and this depth depends upon the numbers of layers in a network. So this is how you can represent a very simple neural network using nested functions. Now let's see what we have learned so far. So initially we saw that we have a very simple neural network structure where we had multiple layers and that we can see here from layer 0 to layer 4. Then we thought about uniquely identifying with some symbol a single node of layer 2. Once that was clear, we went to a different question where we had already given a layer 23 and inside that layer we were thinking that if suppose we get a node that is at some position x, for an example that position could be 18th position. If we are at 18th position, how do we uniquely symbolize or maybe uniquely identify that node? That is very simple that we can write A 23, 23 denotes the layer number and 18, 18 denotes the position at which that node is there. And below, if we see that figure, we have A1, A2 and A3. In A1, A2 and A3, we don't need to write the layer number because we already know that it's in layer 1. As soon as we know that it's in layer 1, we can simply write it as A1, A2, A3, which denotes that it is the first node, second node, and third node of layer 1. I hope whatever we have covered so far in today's video, that must be clear. And if you have any doubts regarding it, you can connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Or if you have any doubts, there's a doubt sheet link. You can post your doubts there.